On the front lines of the Rhine, the Imperial Army engages in a prolonged battle against the Francois Republic. 2nd Lieutenant Tanya de Gurchaf leads the 3rd Platoon of the Imperial Army's 205th Assault Mage Company, with Corporal Victoria Serebryakov as part of her team. When 2 mages under Tanya's command defy her orders, she relocates them to a safer position behind the lines. Subsequently, while en route to reinforce the 403rd Assault Mage Company, the 205th arrives too late to prevent the decimation of the 403rd by Republican Army mages. Tanya instructs the remaining 3 members of her platoon to regroup with other 205th members and confronts the Republican mages alone. Despite her demands for surrender being ignored, Tanya decisively neutralizes the opposing mages. Meanwhile, in the Republican capital, Heresy, military leaders discuss Tanya's formidable combat prowess, labeling her the Devil of the Rhine due to her fearsome reputation. At Imperial Strategic Headquarters in the capital city of Rhine, Lieutenant Colonel Riveting expresses concern over Tanya's deployment at the Rhine, referring to her as a monstrous presence disguised in a girl's form. Simultaneously, Victoria discovers that the insubordinate mages previously relocated by Tanya have perished due to enemy shelling of their position, a situation Tanya had foreseen and accounted for in her plans. In the bustling streets of Tokyo in 2013, a struggling salaryman faces dismissal from his job by his superior. In a startling turn of events, the supervisor is accidentally pushed onto the train tracks, halting time as he falls. Amidst the chaos, a voice proclaims itself as being X, challenging the supervisor to recognize its divine status. Refusing to accept this being as God, the supervisor is branded unfaithful by Being X, leading to a radical decision. Being X transports the skeptical supervisor to an alternate version of Europe in 1913, intent on subjecting him to trials that will compel faith. Meanwhile, in the impoverished confines of a poorly funded orphanage in Rhine, a young girl named Tanya exhibits exceptional magical abilities during routine evaluations. Determined to escape her bleak circumstances, Tanya enlists in the Imperial Army, believing it offers a superior life to the one she faces as an orphan during wartime. Rising through the ranks, she becomes a stringent instructor at a military academy, displaying uncompromising discipline that deeply concerns Riveting, an observer. Years later, in 1923, a 9-year-old Tanya serves as an artillery observer during the initial invasion of the Empire by the Entente at the Northern Theater Force garrison. Tasked with stalling the 5th Aerial Mage Battalion led by Lieutenant Colonel Anson Su, Tanya bravely fulfills her duty despite sustaining severe injuries. Recognized for her valor, she receives the Silver Wings Assault Badge but hopes to avoid frontline deployment. Contrary to her wish, Tanya is celebrated as a hero of the Empire, adorned in ceremonial attire, an unexpected turn from her expectations. Following her recovery, Tanya finds herself relieved to be reassigned to the Tactical Instructor Squad, away from the intense frontline duties. Assigned to test the experimental Elenium Type 95 computation jewel, she faces peril comparable to combat due to its extreme instability. Despite Chief Development Engineer Adelheid von Schugel's relentless efforts, the Type 95 remains dangerously unstable. Displeased with the technology's shortcomings, Tanya requests a transfer, leading to the project's suspension. During a peculiar encounter, Being X manifests through a nutcracker doll, questioning Tanya's lack of faith and insight. Unyielding, Tanya dismisses Being X's claims and destroys the doll. Dismissing it as a dream, she awakens to find a note reading Deus Lo Vault by her bedside, leaving her puzzled. Engaging in one final experiment, as the Type 95 approaches a catastrophic explosion, Being X intervenes, miraculously stabilizing the jewel to showcase his power to Tanya. Now, the Type 95 is exclusive to Tanya, significantly amplifying her abilities but tethered to the condition that she offer prayers to Being X, an aspect she perceives as a curse. The subsequent year sees Tanya redeploy to the front lines, leading up to the events of Episode 1. Recognizing her capabilities, Headquarters determines to enroll her in officer training and Tanya nominates Victoria for the same. Both prepare to return to Rhine for their officer training, while Headquarters acknowledges the necessity of a swift response unit within the Imperial Army, realizing the importance of such a division. 6 months after leaving the front lines, Tanya is still training to be an officer at a military academy and is doing well at her studies. She meets General Zetter in the academy's library and he asks for her opinion on the war. She predicts that it will become a world war and outlines a strategy for the Empire, using the firepower and agility of mages to minimize military losses. He is impressed by her battle knowledge and ideas and asks for a report, which she sees as an opportunity for career advancement. Later, Tanya meets Captain Ugger, one of her academy rivals, in a cafe. Ugger reveals to Tanya that he is more concerned about his family than the war and of the future impact the war will have on his daughter, who he fears may one day be forced to fight. Tanya is able to emotionally manipulate him to drop out of academy in exchange for a safer line of work, securing her position as one of the elite students at the academy. Zetter passes Tanya's plan to General Kurt von Ruttersdorf. At a conference held at the Imperial Strategic Headquarters, Zetter tables Tanya's plan for a rapid response mage battalion, which is accepted. At the Western Theater garrison, Riveting is furious when he learns that Tanya's plan has been implemented with her in command of the rapid reaction invasion force. Tanya is invited to dinner with the colonel, where she is put in charge of a new 48-strong rapid response mage battalion and will be promoted to the rank of captain. Much to her horror, this will actually be more dangerous than fighting on the front lines. She tries to find ways to delay the implementation of the battalion, especially after a large number of applications for the battalion are received, but a newly promoted Victoria is assigned to assist her, thus preventing Tanya from further delaying the formation of the battalion. Tanya holds a test to decide whether or not the mages who have sent in the applications are worthy of joining the new battalion, but most fail, resulting in a low recruitment rate, leading to her superiors complaining that her standards are set too high. Tanya accepts this compromise to accept more lower standard mages and declares that she will bring all the mages to an acceptable standard in just a month. She is granted free rein on how to go about it. She holds a grueling training regime, with many nearly dying, which she hopes would deter them from further training, but the mages are instead frightened that dropping out will incur even worse punishment and decide to continue. Some are even inspired to meet her lofty standards. Within a month, they have been successfully transformed into skilled soldiers, even by Tanya's standards. She then receives instructions to go with her battalion, named the 203rd Aerial Mage Battalion, or Pixie Battalion, to the Grand Duchy of Dacia, which has mobilized its troops and crossed imperial borders. There, the first battle the 203rd encounters is totally in their favor. The Dacians have no mages and still use techniques for outdated forms of warfare, even lacking the capability for the most basic of anti-aircraft operations. The Dacian attack is repulsed with ease by the elite 203rd, resulting in massive Dacian casualties. Tanya commands the 203rd to follow her to the Dacian capital to test their combat prowess, leaving the remainder of the Dacian invasion force to regular imperial forces. There, they locate the Republic-backed Carbelius arms factory that is undefended from aerial attack. Tanya orders the 203rd to attack it, but in accordance with international law, they can only destroy the factory if they have declared their intentions in advance, allowing for armed retaliation. This would give away the 203RD's surprise advantage. However, Tanya uses a childlike voice to broadcast her intentions to destroy the factory over a radio, which is dismissed by factory workers as a harmless child's prank, allowing the 203rd to completely destroy the factory. The 203rd, satisfied with their overwhelming success, returns to base. Headquarters concludes that Imperial troops should be able to completely occupy Dacia by winter and turns their attention to the fact that the Empire is still fighting on two fronts, against the Entente and the Republic. They decide to focus their efforts on destroying the Entente first, but are worried that there will not be sufficient supplies to do so, with there only being enough to last the Imperial army through winter. Finally, an order is sent for the 203rd to transfer to Norden against the Entente. Later, Tanya and Victoria discuss the possibility of the Entente being allied to the Republic and/or the Allied Kingdom, analogous to the United Kingdom, which is later shown to be true. Tanya realizes that Being X may be orchestrating the upcoming World War in order to force a situation wherein she would have no choice but to worship him. At Norden, Viper Battalion fights against attacking Entente forces but faces heavy losses. The 203rd comes in just in time to rescue Viper Battalion and to launch a counterattack. When offered to be reinforced by additional Imperial Army units, Tanya turns down the offer to create a reputation for the 203rd. She chooses to go after enemy bombers, leaving the rest of the 203rd to carry out the attack. After downing a flight of bombers and landing to look for survivors, Being X once again stops time and animates a dead Entente soldier, and asks Tanya how it feels to fight a war against the whole world. Tanya shoots Being X's avatar down and later eradicates a hidden Allied Kingdom observation post that was gathering data on her. At Paris, Lieutenant Colonel Zevran Bayantot informs General Pierre-Claude Lugo of the failure of the Entente's attacks and of Republican mage casualties, advising him to refrain from sending more Republican mages to assist the Entente. However, Lugo refuses, seemingly under the influence of Being X. In the Entente Ministry of Defense, it is revealed that Anson Sue has been promoted to colonel, but is worried about dying and leaving his wife and daughter, Mary Sue, behind. At Port Arnelis, Colonel Sue bids farewell to his family as he leaves for his post at the relatively quiet Orsfjord, located far from the front. Sometime later, he discovers that he had received a rifle from his daughter as an early Christmas present. Meanwhile, at the Imperial Army Northern Theater Command Strategy Conference, Tanya proposes a strategic retreat, thus shortening supply lines for retreating Imperial forces, allowing the Imperial Army to resupply and making it easier for them to launch an offensive in spring. She asserts that while the retreat would continue the war, an offensive at the moment would exhaust the Imperial Army in Norden, thus limiting its effectiveness. Despite this, it is decided that an offensive would be carried out regardless of the potential losses. Afterwards, during a conversation with Rugen and Rudersdorf, she deduces that the offensive's main purpose is to be a diversion for Imperial forces to launch an amphibious offensive at the rear of the enemy. Rudersdorf decides to send the 203rd to launch a surprise attack at the heavily defended Orsfjord in advance of their North Sea fleet. During the attack, the 203rd is intercepted by a battalion-sized unit of mages led by Colonel Sue. Tanya leads the first company in intercepting enemy mages while the second and third companies destroy the defensive cannons located along the coast, allowing the fleet to land and take control of the railroads, in turn allowing for Imperial forces to take over the port. Su's mages are devastated by the first company. In a final confrontation, Tanya bayonets Su, who falls into the sea. Tanya recovers Su's rifle and claims it as her own. Mary Sue and her mother in Arkansas hear over the radio that the Orsfjord's defenders were wiped out, causing Mary to cry. The Enta and the Republican Army's 2nd Mage Company support a rebel uprising in Rhine City against Imperial occupiers, located in former Republican territory in the Western Theater. This is a problem because the Rhine rebels now control the large railroad that passes through Rhine, which is straining Imperial supply lines. The 203rd are ordered to intercept and destroy all resistance even if it means civilian casualties. They find the city heavily defended. However, Strategic Command has a plan to rapidly suppress the Rhine rebellion, as in accordance to international law, should a city not be evacuated after an evacuation order, all remaining people in a city will be treated as enemy soldiers. After a fierce attack by the 203rd, battered Republican mages seek shelter in a building. Following a refusal to surrender or evacuate, the 203rd observes the murder of a captured Imperial soldier by Rhine rebels, providing a casus belli for retaliation. Rhine comes under sustained attack from Imperial artillery, causing countless civilian deaths. The Republican mages are driven off completely and control of Rhine is returned to the Empire. 2nd Lieutenant Vuren Grants refuses to open fire at the Rhine rebels, but Tanya pressures him into doing so. At strategic headquarters, Zetter reveals to Rhine that the idea for the destruction of Rhine actually came from a thesis written by Tanya that details methods to circumvent international laws on city bombardment. At an Allied Kingdom hospital, the critically wounded Colonel Su slowly recovers from his encounter with Tanya and says that God told him to destroy the devil. In the aftermath of the Rhine battle, Tanya reconnects with Major Ugger, who unveils an intricate scheme, dubbed Operation Revolving Door, aimed at luring Republican forces into a strategic trap. This multifaceted plan comprises 4 distinct phases. Proposing this strategy at the Command Strategy Conference, Zetur orchestrates the utilization of the 203rd to strike the rear of the Republican forces. The Empire initiates the first phase, Operation Fog and Sun, deploying an extensive disinformation campaign to deceive the Republican forces into believing in a large-scale Imperial retreat. Concurrently, Rhine briefs Tanya on the second phase, Operation Shock and Awe, designed to dismantle Republican command headquarters and disrupt their communication networks. Shuggle introduces a cutting-edge weapon, the V-1 high-speed rocket, slated to transport the 203rd to 3 potential enemy headquarters locations. Meanwhile, at the Rhine, Imperial troops execute a tactical retreat from the front line, seemingly allowing the confident advance of the Republican forces. However, unbeknownst to the advancing Republicans, the Imperial Army strategically places booby traps during their withdrawal, setting the stage for unforeseen obstacles. Su is shown to have survived, and seen to be traveling on an Allied Kingdom ship and plotting his revenge on Tanya. Following the success of Operation Shock and Awe, the 203rd proceeds to retreat via submarine. At the Imperial High Council, various military leaders undergo a grilling by government officials on their strategy of withdrawal, accused of exposing Imperial manufacturing facilities to potential Republican attack. They delay their response, stalling for time while they wait for Tanya's unit to report on their status. Finally, Zetter announces to the Imperial High Council that the enemy command structure has been destroyed and the commencement of the 3rd phase of Operation Lockpick. It starts with the detonation of the traps left behind by the retreating Imperial Army, resulting in widespread Republican losses. Without communications, the Republican forces are in disarray and suffer a sustained counterattack by Imperial heavy armor and mechanized infantry who completely encircle Republican forces. During an investigation on the cause of the communications breakdown, the Enta arrives at the ruins of the Republican Army's headquarters and is horrified. The 203rd takes part in the 4th phase of Operation Revolving Door, a series of mop-up operations against Republican Army remnants, but suddenly come under attack from an Allied Kingdom mage unit with long-range weapons led by Su. The dwindled 203rd refuses to retreat and seizes the offensive, leveraging their altitude advantage. However, they endure severe losses, especially under Su's devastatingly enhanced trench gun. Tanya confronts Su in a face-to-face encounter, recognizing him from their prior engagement. But a startling revelation occurs when she realizes Su is under the influence of being X, leading to a gripping struggle. With Victoria's assistance, Tanya breaks free, relentlessly firing into Su despite his magical defenses. Su, battered by bullets, triggers an explosive, yet Tanya and Victoria withstand the blast, narrowly escaping harm. Just in time, Imperial reinforcements swoop in, driving off the Allied Kingdom mages. Remarkably, most of the 203rd survives despite the casualties. The impactful losses inflicted upon the Republican forces due to the Operation Revolving Door compel their abandonment of Paris-Sea. Imperial forces swiftly occupy the city, marking a significant triumph. The Imperial High Council commends the military's success and deliberates on acquiring the Republic's colonies. As the men of the 203rd celebrate on a Republican beach, Tanya and Victoria contemplate the war's conclusion. Tanya suspects the Republic's intentions to evacuate by sea, preparing for a counteroffensive. Desiring Desiring to strike at the Republican military port of Brest, Tanya seeks permission, only to face refusal. Furthermore, she's restricted from conducting her own reconnaissance, a missed opportunity that leaves her frustrated about potentially concluding the war. As the Empire revels in the temporary truce signaling a potential armistice and the end of the war, Tanya confides in Rhine, acknowledging her realization that the cessation of hostilities is but a temporary respite. She understands that the Republic and other nations, unwilling to accept the Empire's ascent to unrivaled power, will inevitably reignite conflict, an inherent aspect of human nature. The Empire's remarkable growth prompts the remaining global powers, the Allied Kingdom, and Unified States, to forge an alliance against the Empire. Amidst this tense atmosphere, General Lugo's proclamation of the Free Republic's emergence from Tunis shatters the Empire's hopes for a lasting peace. Citizens and soldiers alike comprehend that the war persists. As battles reignite, Tanya and her squad receive orders to embark on African soil to confront the Free Republic. In the Unified States, Mary Sue, endowed with being X's blessing, enlists in the U.S. Army, driven by a quest for vengeance against Tanya for her father's demise, setting the stage for a clash between two empowered individuals amidst the escalating global conflict. The anime explores themes of war, the nature of power, and the consequences of one's actions. Its meaning is deeply rooted in the examination of the human condition within the context of conflict and the pursuit of power. Tanya's character embodies the harsh realities of war and the moral ambiguity surrounding it. The moral message conveyed in the saga of Tanya the Evil revolves around the dangers of ambition, the cost of power, and the moral conflicts within war. Tanya's pursuit of power and survival drives her to make ruthless decisions, often at the expense of others. The series presents a stark commentary on the dehumanizing effects of war, the manipulation of ideologies, and the ethical dilemmas faced by individuals caught in the midst of conflict. Moreover, the anime highlights the consequences of arrogance and the inability to empathize with others. Tanya's relentless pursuit of her goals blinds her to the suffering of those around her, ultimately leading to a reflection on the moral implications of her actions and the true cost of her ambition. Additionally, the series touches upon themes of fate and free will. Tanya's reincarnation and her subsequent actions prompt contemplation on whether her fate is predetermined or if she has the agency to shape her destiny. Thank you for watching. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel, because it is very important for the development of the channel.